The Chargers have a primetime showdown in the desert tonight, and we are looking for their offense to put a beatdown on a bad Cardinals defense.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 9 seasons together, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. To make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Well, Daniel, tonight it's primetime Monday Night Football, Chargers and Cardinals. And on offense, the Chargers need to run the football. The Cardinals give up over 150 rushing yards per game. J.K. Dobbins needs to get fed tonight. And on defense, the Chargers have to keep account of Kyler Murray. He is one of the best running quarterbacks in the NFL and probably is the second best running quarterback the Chargers are going to play outside of Lamar Jackson this season. Then we're going to wrap things up with our bold and game predictions.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of ways to get bold, and you guys definitely came through with the bold predictions on today's show, but it is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. David, when thinking about this game for the Chargers offense, I mean, I think one of the first things that you said to me was just be aggressive, go at them, because this is not a good defense that the Chargers are going up against. And I think the only thing that makes you a little bit hesitant for the Chargers offense, outside of the fact that we've just seen them disappear for stretches at a time, we haven't seen them play many worse defenses. Maybe the, Panthers are probably a worse defense. Raiders aren't very good, but this is a bad defense. They should be able to take advantage of it. And even though there are some guys questionable for this game in the receiving core and some offensive weapons, they still have plenty enough to be able to get it done against this team.
Absolutely. I want the Chargers to attack this team offensively. They are vulnerable against the pass and the run. They're 22nd in passing yards allowed, 29th in rushing yards allowed. They don't create a lot of turnovers. They have 5 interceptions, 3 fumbles, 8 total. They do not get a lot of pressure on the quarterback. Only 11 sacks, 56 pressures, and for contrast, the Chargers have generated 86 pressures so far this season. So this is a team that the Chargers should be aggressive. They should go out there and open up the playbook a little bit, throw the ball down the field because they should have opportunities, and they should be heavily involved in the running game, Daniel. They should be running the ball down this Cardinals defense throat.
I mean, that's why we were talking about it on the crossover, right? It's like you have to be able to do that if you want to have a great chance to win this game. And one of the things that I think frustrated us most about Chargers teams in the past is it just didn't even matter if they went up against the worst run defense in the league. It just never felt like the Chargers had the team that can consistently take advantage of it. So far this year, the Chargers have been able to do that. Even when they went up against a very good run defense last week against the Broncos, they still found a way to get it done. They still found a way for it to be a big part of the offense, still found a way to find some explosives in the running game. And it does feel like a game where J.K. Dobbins could go absolutely bananas, but also feels like a game where this Chargers offensive line, which has been better at run blocking than they have at pass blocking, should be able to beat them up front and win the battle in the trenches and get what they want on the ground. I think the other big thing for me offensively is keep your foot on the gas, right? It's find the killer instinct, because we've seen the Chargers have some very strong first halves, but this is still a team that hasn't scored a second half touchdown, right, since week 1. They played 4 other games since then, right? That's crazy. Really just unacceptable. Even against the Panthers, they didn't do it right. Even last week when they had multiple chances to put the game away, they didn't do it. So I think for them going up against this team, going up against a team who's allowed the 5th most points in the league, the 5th most yards in the league, I understand that you, like, even when you're up in a game, that you don't want to have the bad thing that's going to let the team back in it, right? But you have one of the most trustworthy quarterbacks, one of the most turnover, one of the least turnover worthy. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say risk averse because he still will push the ball down the field, but he's a guy that doesn't put the ball in harm's way. Yeah. He's extremely safe with the football, even when he's throwing it down the field. So True. You have no reason to not try to put this game away, put your foot on their throat and finish it, because the offense has some problems. But one of the biggest things has just been not being able to put games away and kind of just make a game a laugher. So you can kind of rest some guys and do what you need to in games where you're up, like they were last week, right? They had That game should have never been close. It should have never come
not
down
even
to an onside kick. Like, it's crazy that it got to that point. My other big key here, David, Josh Palmer has to step up. As the one wide receiver that's not on the injury report outside of Brendan Rice, it's time. There's a time we thought he would be wide receiver 1 for this team. That hasn't been the case. Quentin Johnston and Ladd McConkey have both been ahead of him this season for sure, but Quentin Johnston's doubtful for this game. DJ Chark, Simi Fehoko, Darius Davis, and Ladd McConkey are all questionable for this game. This wide receiving core is super banged up. They need Josh Palmer, who has had games, right, where he's been able to step up and have 100-yard games in the past. This has to be one of those games where he steps up and can be that guy at least for a game.
And it's kind of funny how the tables have turned here for Joshua Palmer, because at the beginning of this season, he had a myriad of different injuries that he was suffering and battling through. And now all of a sudden, after a bye week, seems like he is probably the healthiest wide receiver outside of Brendan Rice, who hasn't touched the field yet, on this football team right now. So yeah, Joshua Palmer needs to pick up the slack. He needs to go out there and show everybody why we had all the confidence in the world in him and his ability to go be a number 1 wide receiver, because we had seen him go out there and do it. This is a time to step up. And I also think another one of my keys is to set up some deep shots. This is a team in the Arizona Cardinals that, you want to batter them on the ground for sure. There is a huge opportunity to run the ball, control the clock, and to really be able to punish this, Cardinals defense. But that does not mean that there won't be opportunities to throw down the football field. So whether it is DJ Chark that is available, and hopefully he does make his season debut, or it's a guy like Brendan Rice, who also has a similar skill set, who is pretty good in the contested catch situations we haven't really seen, but I feel like this is the game, considering all of the injuries that the Chargers are dealing with in that wide receiver room, that he could actually get involved in the game plan, get on the field, and go out there and make some plays. I think that the Chargers have to make sure and work those in, and as Justin Herbert is healthier, maybe they can do some of those things where they move the pocket and they get him out in space and let him go chuck the ball down the field, because we know Justin Herbert has one of the biggest arms in the NFL.
Yeah, and it'll be up to his protection to give him an opportunity to do it. But I think that has been lacking, whether it's just because of the skill players they have at that position, at least on wide receiver, or just, Justin Herbert not having the chemistry with those guys. But even last week, you had probably 4 deep 25-plus yard shots that they took, and there was only one completed, and it was the one to Simi Fehoko, who made a ridiculous catch, and it was a great throw. But haven't really been on the same page as far as that goes. And I think if you're trying to target them in the passing game, like, there's guys that you go after, right? And guys that, especially in catch and run situations, it'd be great to have, Quentin Johnston. Not sure he's going to be available, but an old friend, Kazir White, not great so far this year in coverage, has 3 missed tackles on passing plays when trying to tackle receiving options, whoever that may be. And he's allowed, I was surprised by this, 259 yards already as a linebacker. That's a big number, and 14.3 yards per catch for him. And then if Sean Murphy Bunting plays, that's the obvious place that you're trying to find mismatches. I think Ladd McConkey would cook him if he plays, and they can single up that matchup. That's what I'm going after too, because he hasn't been better. 15 out of 19 when targeted this year.
Whew.
That's ridiculous. That's almost 80%
Giant
completion.
Red target.
And another guy where you can turn a smaller play into a big play. He's missed 4 tackles so far this year on passing plays. So it's not just in the run game, where I do think the Chargers can attack them on the perimeter, just like the Packers did last year. I mean, even get the wide receivers involved in the run game, right? The Packers did it well last week too. But I think those are the guys that you're trying to target if you're looking for weaknesses in this passing game.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for Kaiser, I think he's given up 18 receptions on 21 targets. So it's been really, really bad. There's definitely some guys in the secondary, especially in their safety room, where I feel like if you get those guys in a favorable matchup, you definitely should be targeting them down the field.
Yeah, I mean, they do have Budda Baker back there, right? They do have Adrian Taylor back there, who's been good. But there are some definite matchups where if you see those guys on the field, they should be lit up. I think the other big thing for this Chargers team, win the battle in the red zone, right? Chargers 1 of 3 last week. A big reason why they didn't put that game away is they were 1 of 3. And I'll also tell you this. You might be wondering how this 2-4 Cardinals team took down the San Francisco 49ers, who are, I think, unequivocally the better team, right? It's because the 49ers went 1 out of 6 in the red zone. That's how you get beat by a worse team. If the Chargers take care of business in the red zone, I think they'll be in good shape to win this game. But I think they're also going to need, in a game where, they're going to be missing some defensive players, some key defensive contributors, they need one of their stars to show up. And I think Derwin James if he can put together a game, is a great matchup against this Cardinals offense. So we're going to get into our defensive keys for success and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, though, I need to tell you guys that this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. October is the season for wearing masks and costumes, but for some of us, we feel like we wear a mask and hide more often than we want to at work and social settings and around our family. Therapy can help you learn to accept all parts of yourself so you can take off the mask, because masks should be for Halloween fun, not for our emotions. I think everyone has had times where they try to put on a brave face and put on a mask. And I think one of the great things about therapy is being able to take the mask off and being, really just able to see that you are putting the mask on and kind of keeping things from people and not knowing what's important to let out there. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. And all you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Take off the mask with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. I also need to tell you guys about something really cool: history, economics, the great works of literature, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution. Did you study these things in school? Probably not. Or even if you did, maybe it's time for a refresher. Time and technology have changed a lot of things, but they do not change basic fundamental truths about the world and our place in it. Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including, here are just a few courses available: Constitution 101, the meaning of history of the Constitution, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, and the Rise and the Fall of the Roman Republic. The great thing is, all of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced, so you can start whenever and tune in whenever. Plus, if you want to go deeper into it, there's readings, quizzes, and discussions, or you can just enjoy the free lectures. If you just want to learn, this is a great place to do it. Go right to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. All right, David, let's get into the defensive side of things. And I did bring up Derwin James, so I do want to get into, especially because of what he was able to do the last time these two teams matched up against each other. Because against a team like the Arizona Cardinals, prime Derwin James, there's not many people that you could have a better matchup for than Derwin James going up against this team. And why do I say that? I say that because the Cardinals' second or first best weapon this year and an up-and-coming star is Trey McBride, and you have a guy that can physically match up with him. There's not many safeties that are the size and can move the way that Derwin James does. So you have a potential answer for that, right? Trey McBride's great. He's not Travis Kelce, and if you've held your own against Travis Kelce, I know you have it in your bag to be able to do that, especially in a game like this where you're going to be missing some players defensively. The Chargers, as much as we talked about all those receivers on the injury report, Joey Bosa is doubtful for this game. Dean Leonard is out of this game. Two of your starting three corners are questionable for this game with Christian Fulton and Jasir Taylor, and another of your starting corners is already on injured reserve with Asante Samuel Jr. With those injuries, the Chargers need a vintage Derwin James performance, because I think the other thing is he is also a great piece to have against a guy like Kyler Murray, right? Blitzing someone like Derwin James gives you someone that's actually athletic enough to chase him down. Last week, he had the opportunity. He didn't do it against Bo Nix. He has to be able to finish when he gets there. But to me, one of the biggest things the Chargers could have going in their favor in this game is getting a big game from Derwin James, who picked off Kyler Murray the last time they played.
Yeah, and hey, speaking of those turnovers, I think that Derwin James needs to bring that back into his bag and show that he can do it, because we haven't seen it in quite a while, and we know that he has the ball skills to be able to go out there and make those type of plays. But yeah, I mean, having him line up against Trey McBride, and hopefully, he'll be able to do that because of the injuries situation, because he was forced into the nickel, last week because of those cornerback injuries. So we'll see what the alignment's going to look like. We'll see what Jesse Minter has and how he wants to deploy against these weapons that the Cardinals have. It's Trey McBride, 28 receptions, 28 of 37, 271 yards. Marvin Harrison Jr., 17 receptions on 37 targets. So the reason why I want to point that out is, and I've watched most of these games, we've had a little extra time, they are not on the same page. Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyler Murray are not on the same page, and they haven't been since probably week 2 when Marvin Harrison Jr. had his big game, his big breakout.
The one big game.
Yeah, the one big game that he has on his 2024 season so far. That's when they were at their best, but they have not been anywhere close to that. Do not let this be the game where they get back on the same page. Unfortunately for the Chargers, Cam Hart, who's probably going to be lined up against him, had a lot of success against him in college. Hopefully that translates over to the NFL side of things.
Yeah, it's interesting because him and Tarheeb still both guys that we imagine are going to have a big impact and probably play a lot of snaps in this game, especially if Jasir Taylor, right, and Christian Fulton can't go. They both have experience against him in college to some degree. So how much does that play a factor into the NFL level? I'm not sure, but I think you're absolutely right about it. Don't be like, he's already shown that he can take over a game. He's only done it once. He's a rookie, right? He's very new to the league, but we watched him too. We wanted him on the Chargers as much as anything, right? He can do it. Don't let it happen to you. But the good news is, the Chargers have been pretty good against wide receivers so far this year. Hopefully these guys, whoever's out there, can keep it up, with Jesse Minter also having an extra day to prepare. I think the other thing is bottling up the Cardinals running game. To me, putting them in bad situations is a great way to make a team that's turned the ball over in every single game force a turnover. Like Kyler Murray only has 2 interceptions, but he's also fumbled the ball twice. They will turn the ball over, right? You have to be able to take advantage of it, but I think it starts with bottling up the running game, which includes Kyler Murray on designed runs and scrambles, right? Kyler Murray is averaging 9.4 yards per scramble. If you let him get out of the pocket, I'm telling you, it's a free first down, right? 9.4 yards. That's a first down, basically. If you let him get out, and I know this was a focus on the crossovers, so we won't get too much into it, but like that is so important. And I think the other big thing here is in 3 of the 4 losses that the Cardinals have had, James Conner has averaged less than 3.4 yards per carry. They had one game where they ran the ball exceptionally well and still got blown out by the Commanders, which is pretty confusing. But for the most part, if you can bottle up their running game and you've had a good run defense, if you can put them with longer downs and distances to work with, and also give Jesse Minter that advantage of giving him the opportunity to cook some things up on 3rd and longs in situations like that, I think that's awesome. And I think it also will help because it's going to make them resort to the short passing game, which could lead to some jump balls, right, and interceptions and turnovers that way. So I think bottling up the Cards running game is definitely one for me.
Well, and be ready for the physicality that James Conner is going to bring to the table because he is a very physical runner. He is very much like a Najee Harris. Pittsburgh has a kind of style of running back that they like, and obviously it's no surprise that James Conner was a former Pittsburgh Steeler. So definitely be ready. 89 carries, 398 yards, 4.5 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, 23 missed tackles forced, which is crazy. That's basically almost 4 missed tackles forced per contest. So this is a guy that he can run around you, but he wants to run through you. Like he wants to impose his will. He wants to break your will. You can't let it happen. You got to match that energy. You have to overwhelm that energy, and you have to slow him down because they want to run that offense through him. They want to control the clock just like the Chargers do on the other side of the ball. So do not let that get going. And yes, Kyler Murray and controlling Kyler Murray and staying very disciplined is going to be so important because that's the big key for me is you have to control Kyler Murray and his ability to affect the game with his legs. 30 attempts so far, 261 yards, 15 scrambles for 147 yards, and also had 15 design runs for 114 yards. So bottom line here is when the ball is in Kyler Murray's hands and he's running, he is extremely dangerous. Yeah. And so the Chargers have to make sure that they funnel him where their help is and they don't let him get outside the numbers because that's when the big plays happen. And we saw last week when Bo Nix got on the loose, big plays happen and games get closer than you want them to be.
And there's nothing more frustrating for a defensive coordinator specifically than, having the right play dialed up, having everyone cover, but you can only cover for so long. If you give a quarterback enough time, if you let him get out of the pocket, it's going to turn into chunk plays, especially for this team, especially with one of the more dangerous running quarterbacks in the league with Kyler Murray. If you give it to him, he's going to take it. Say the last thing I'd throw in, I want to see those slot blitzes that Jesse Minter has been able to,
absolutely
really been able to work well even against great teams, even confusing, guys like Patrick Mahomes this year. Like Jesse Minter is going to have to cook up a hell of a game plan for this one. We know that this Cardinals offense can self-destruct, but they do it to themselves for the most part. Like there's not a bad team. They have skill players. Kyler Murray is pretty good. They have guys that can make plays. But I like the slot blitzes specifically because I want smaller guys chasing after Kyler Murray, please, right? He's made so many 300-pounders look so silly. I think it also helps, too, because for a guy that's the size of Kyler Murray. If you can send that slot blitz, even if they're trying to beat it with a hot route and get it out quick, you have guys that have been well trained in this defense to bat those balls down, right? We saw it, Tarheeb Still 2 times in one single preseason game. He blitzed twice. Both times he got in the throwing lane. Both times he batted the ball down. And I'm telling you, a batted ball is the same thing as stuffing a run for 0 yards. Stuffing a run for 0 yards probably feels better, but it has the same outcome, right? You're getting 0 yards out of it. It puts them behind the stakes. So I want to see those slot blitzes to have, like I said, smaller guys chasing after Kyler Murray. He might make them look silly, but when it's big guys, man, he is one of the more slippery guys that you're going to see on this schedule. So we do have more great stuff to get into because we had a lot of good bold predictions from the everydayers out there, and we have to tell you who we think is going to win this one. All that and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First of all, I need to tell you guys that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And having all of that while you want to do live in-game betting is crucial. But this week, the Chargers, the gap has been shortened. The Chargers are now only 1.5-point favorites in Arizona on Monday Night Football. This is no doubt due to the availability probably of Marvin Harrison Jr. and also the Chargers' lengthy injury report. But this is not a game the Chargers can overlook. They're telling you it's a coin flip, basically. But I love the Chargers in this game, especially as far as anytime touchdown scores, because that's what I love. J.K. Dobbins is minus, right, to actually get in the end zone, but J.K. Dobbins to score first in this game, which I think is a decent likelihood, plus 470, almost 5-1. And then I love a Ladd McConkey, if he can play an anytime touchdown for him at plus 210. Double your money like that, I would love it. And you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet on FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com. All right, David, let's get into our game and bold predictions. We have a lot of great bold predictions from the everydayers out there, and thank you to the everydayers for making us your first listen. As always, if you need a second listen, make sure to check out the new slate at Locked On NFL, where they have 2 shows a day. You can get a double shot of espresso with Tyler the Madman Rowland in the morning, or kickback in the barbershop with Tony Wiggins as they bring on the local experts that cover their team every single day. Make sure you guys check that out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast from. David, let's get into some bold predictions, and thank you to everyone who hit us up at Locked On LAC on Twitter, where we post the show every day and also post all of the fan mail shows, all of the buy or sell shows, and all the bold prediction posts are on there as well, so you guys can get in on the action. But this one here, first is from Leo SD619. He says, the Chargers will rush for over 200 yards in this game. David, this is a matchup that definitely benefits the Chargers. They have to be able to take advantage of it if they really want to put a stranglehold on this game. Do you think that's something they could get to?
I actually do. I do think this is something that is attainable, because this is a perfect match. This, if you go to Greg Roman and say, who do you want to go up against? He's probably going to say the Arizona Cardinals, because they give up 150 plus rushing yards per contest. And Greg Roman would love to run the ball as many times as humanly possible. And with the Chargers having both of their tackles seemingly 100% back and healthy, they were not on the injury report whatsoever. Neither was Justin Herbert. That they want to run the ball. And of course, when both those tackles are in there, they get a lot more of that rushing output, a lot more success running the football. So I think that is definitely attainable going up against this defense.
Yeah, I mean, they gave up 216 to the Commanders in week 4. The offensive line is maybe the Chargers' only healthy position right now. I mean, if you're looking at it, right? I think the other big thing is this is a team that hasn't allowed less than 153 yards in 4 straight games, right? It's 150, it's 170, it's 180, it's 200. Like, this team has just been getting gashed on the ground. Yeah. This would be one of the opportunities for a team that's already hit over 200 this year in week 2 against the Panthers for the Chargers to get there and do it again. But this one's from L.A. Quay, who says his bold prediction is this: Marvin Harrison Jr. is held to under 80 yards despite the injuries to the secondary. David, we talked about a little bit how the Chargers might not have Christian Fulton. They might not have Jasir Taylor. Can they keep this future superstar, in my opinion, to under 80 yards in this game?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely possible that they can do that. I mean, if you look at Marvin Harrison Jr.'s stat lines, he's only actually done it one time this season. I mean, it was week 2 where, you know, he had 4 catches for $130 and 2 of his 4 touchdowns on the season. But I also mentioned that Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyler Murray were not on the same page. Now, with the injuries that are in the secondary, this very well could be the week that they get back on that same page. Hopefully that is not the case. But I feel like that is definitely something that is possible with Jesse Minter in control of that defense, figuring out a way to be able to neutralize or limit the effectiveness of a clearly extremely talented player. I think is something that Jesse Minter has proven that he is capable of scheming up.
Yeah, like Quay, I'm definitely willing to take this leap with you. The Chargers have not allowed a 100-yard receiver this year. They've also only allowed one 80-yard receiver all year, and it's probably not who you think it is. It was Calvin Austin, who was buoyed by a 55-yard touchdown when the Chargers defense was gassed. But this Chargers defense plays well against wide receivers. He would only be the second player to surpass 80 yards this year. So I'm surprised he's playing, honestly, after getting a concussion. Like the thought of him potentially getting a second concussion in this game, that's my, future superstar. I'm probably not taking that chance, but to each their own. Let's get to this one here. Chris S. will speed it up a little bit. Bold prediction. Stone Smartt, the tight end, emerges as a pass-catching threat. 5 catches, 70 yards, and a touchdown. That's definitely a bold prediction because this man had his first catch last week, David, but Hayden Hurst is probably not going to play.
Yeah, I mean, hey, whenever we look at these bold predictions, it's all about opportunity. Is he going to be able to get the chance to be able to get to that stat line? Well, yeah, the answer is yes. I feel like he's probably going to be the primary pass-catching tight end right now in this setup, but they also have utilized, Will Dissly in the screen game quite a bit, and it has worked quite a bit as well lately. So I don't know. I think this one right here is something where I'm going to have to see to believe. This one's kind of aggressive, just considering, where he hasn't really been super involved in the offense.
The opportunity could be there for him. I'm sure we'll probably still see a lot of Eric Tomlinson too. I'm sure the Chargers will probably want to go heavy. They might not need or feel the need to have their, pass catching options out there. Whoever's on the field is their pass catching option. Will Dissly is the guy who's easily had the most targets, but it has basically only been screenplay production. They could use a boost, and it would be great to see that from Stone Smartt. Yeah. Let's get to it here, who has a relatively tame bold prediction for us this week. Let's hear what he has.
Hi, Dan. Hi, David. This is FTU. My bold prediction for Monday, the Chargers will score 17 second-half points and win 31-21. Let's go, baby. Love you.
I mean, the most unrealistic part of that feels like it's the 17 second-half points, right? Because I think the most they've scored all year is 10 second-half points in the first game of the season against the Raiders. And since then, not a single touchdown. The most they've scored is 6 points in the second half since week 1. So it doesn't feel that crazy to me, David. That score doesn't feel very far off from where I'm going to have it eventually, but I think it's doable. I mean, and I just feel like what it would do for my confidence in this offense, and I think what they could take away from that going forward would be invaluable.
Yeah, I think it's very, very important that they do that, because I think we have seen some progression lately of them being able to sustain more drives, which obviously ultimately will lead to more points. Yeah. But they need to have that bleed over into the second half, because they have scored a total of 12 points in the last 5 games in the second half of the football game. That is it. It's been really, really limited.
I think the last 4 games, right? Outside of week 1.
Right. Last 4 games, excuse me. They scored, obviously the touchdown to Ladd McConkey in the Raiders game, the first game of the season. Yeah. They have not scored a touchdown since then.
And just only one all season is pretty crazy.
Yeah. One all season is not going to cut it. It's something that has to be a focus, has to be corrected going forward, because you got to score touchdowns in this league to win games. You can't rack up the field goals and expect to have a good record at the end of the year.
Yeah, that's just a fact. I mean, it's going to come up, and they're going to need it, and they just have to, even especially against a team that has an ability to be explosive. Like Kyler Murray is an explosive quarterback. They have guys that can make big plays, and if Bo Nix can do it against you in a late game situation, Kyler Murray definitely can too. So it's got to get tightened up. The Chargers have to find a way to be better finishers in this game. But David, what is your bold prediction for this week?
Yeah, so my bold prediction is going to be centered around Daiyan Henley. I think Daiyan Henley and his athleticism, his ability to go out there and cover, especially when we're talking about a couple of tight ends on the Arizona Cardinals that are a big focal point or a big part of their offense. I feel like Daiyan Henley and his ability to cover is going to show up pretty big in this game. And we always know he's always all around the football. So I'm going to go 10 tackles. I'm going to go a sack, and I am going to go an interception for Daiyan Henley. That he's going to take back to the house.
I love that. I mean, Daiyan definitely, it feels like he's so close to making some big plays in coverage. I think it's great, and they're going to need him to be in this game. I'm going to go with Kamani Vidal, the kid. I have 10 carries for 80 yards and a touchdown plus a 30-plus yard run for Kimani Vidal in this game. Should get a bigger load than last week, going up against a much worse run defense. And I don't think he really got to show what he's capable of. I think he'll tack on a few receptions as well. But I have him getting more involved, showing a little bit more of what he can potentially be, and maybe showing a little bit of J.K. Dobbins with a 30-plus run. But, David, put your money where your mouth is now. I mean, also, how about Brendan Rice? Brendan Rice makes his first career reception in this game. That's what I want to see. It'd be absolutely insane if Brendan Rice is active for this game.
Yeah.
He has to be, especially with the banged-up receiving core. But, David, final time. Do you think the Chargers get to pull this off while everyone is ridiculously watching this game on ESPN Plus tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific time?
Yeah, it is ridiculous. I feel you, trust me, people out there. But I do feel like this is going to be a fireworks game for the Chargers. I think this is going to be where they have the most explosive plays that they have had all season. I think this is a defense they're going up against that is conducive for this type of performance. So I also feel like Jesse Minter is going to have them ready to go. With a full week of preparation, he'll be able to limit Marvin Harrison Jr. I have the Chargers beating the Arizona Cardinals and improving to 4-2 with a score of 28-17.
And be there, season high in points. I hope to see it. My final score, I have the Chargers winning this game as well, but I really do feel like it's a coin flip. I don't think Chargers fans should overlook this game. I think the Cardinals are probably a little bit better, especially offensively, than what their 2-4 record shows. But this is a game you have to get done. This is a soft stretch you have right here. You need to go win this game. I have the Chargers 23, Cardinals 19. I think the Chargers do find a way to put it away in the fourth quarter and make it out of reach, and then the Cardinals are able to, cut it a little closer late. But I think Jesse Minter, with the ragtag group of guys that he could potentially have for this one, is going to put together a solid performance against this Cardinals offense, and the Chargers find a way to get it done. We're going to try to have a live show for you guys tonight. It's obviously a late game. We'll see how early we can get it out. There's also the Chargers postcast, so make sure you check out those guys who will be live right after the game. That's a great way to get your raw emotional feelings right after the game. So thank you guys for checking out today's show and making us your first listen. To make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from, as well as finding us on all of our social media, on Twitter at Locked On LAC, on Instagram at Locked On Chargers, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page, so that you guys never miss the show, or call into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924 like Fear does. But get it done. Get to 4-2, which would be absolutely huge for this team with some soft games coming up. This is where the Chargers can make their run, but it starts right now. Prime time tonight, 6 p.m. against a Cardinals team that they should absolutely beat. So make sure you guys are back for the post-game show. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.